Hello and welcome to Adventures in Venueland, an EVMC podcast. Join us for this all-access pass backstage and behind the scenes with some of the brightest minds that cross the scope of the live event industry. I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. We'll introduce you to incredible guests who journey with us as we dive deep into the world of venues, tours, festivals, and everything in between. Grab your laminate and meet us in Venueland.
Today's adventure takes us to the West Coast, where we're checking in with a man who 45 seasons ago was a young sports photographer. And now 45 seasons later, he's still shooting Los Angeles Kings hockey. But how did that happen? And how did he become the man behind so many iconic NBA photos, including partnering with Kobe on a book? He hosts his own podcast. Please welcome sports photographer extraordinaire, Andrew Bernstein. Welcome to the podcast.
Fellas, so great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Paul, you were excited about this one because you, as a big photo nerd, you were saying that Andrew here has kind of been the man behind so many of your favorite NBA photos over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you do any sports photography, really any photography, but especially like live event photography, like concerts and sports, you definitely pay closer attention when you see iconic photos. And I think you have a deeper appreciation for like angles, very subtle things that maybe your average person would see and be like, wow, what a great photo. But sometimes it's like the photographers are like, wow, what a almost impossible and improbable photo, and yet amazing. Like, how did this photographer, pull this off? How are they in the right place at the right time? So of course I definitely have known about Andy's work, and, you and I were talking, there's so many iconic photos and moments that, you've been privy to, and it's been a hell of a ride. It sounds like so far. I mean, plenty, still going on. You're still shooting stuff right now. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. I actually had a really wacky game last night. Went overtime, and I'm feeling it this morning, but that's okay. I'm glad to still be doing it.
Well, let's start off early. Let's go back to that day because I think so many of us in the industry are contacted by photographers all the time who say, "Hey, I'm just trying to build up my resume. I'd like to come shoot this event." And so often we kind of have that standard response of, "We have our own team of photographers. We're all set. You're not getting in. Good luck. Start somewhere smaller." But let's talk about that day that you were a young sports photographer going to school at the Arts Center College of Design, and you had this credential to shoot an event. How did you? What at that moment helped you kind of jumpstart that career?
Well, I kind of had a path set out for myself. I don't know if it was conscious or unconscious. Probably was a little more on the conscious side. But when I transferred from University of Massachusetts to go to Arts Center, it was a very thought out decision. Let's just say that I needed to up my game in terms of learning about photography as a career. I had decided by that point, it was in the beginning of my junior year at UMass, that I wanted to be a photographer of some kind, probably documentary, photojournalism, something like that. Wasn't sure. Sports was definitely up there, but I wasn't sure that was, going to be the path. So I had to leave UMass, which was difficult because, my whole life was there. My whole family was back there, and, great friends group and all that stuff. But I made this big leap of faith, went to Art Center, where immediately I was told that I didn't belong there. You don't do the kind of photography that we support here. We're not at School of Photojournalism. We're a commercial and art and hardcore advertising school. But, I'm a Brooklyn guy, and you tell me I can't do something or I'm not supposed to be there, I'm just going to cement myself in.
I'm going to say, it gives you a little chip, right?
Yeah. So that's just the beginning of the answer, because the rest of the answer, guys, is that two of my teachers took me under their wing, but one in particular, Bill Robbins, introduced me to a Sports Illustrated photographer that he used to work for, actually, as an assistant. I became the fourth assistant on a major shoot that this guy, Lane Stewart, did of the Lakers. And through Lane, I met the local or the regional LA-based photographers for SI, and they started taking me around to arenas. I learned the very specialized technique of lighting arenas like the Forum, the Sports Arena, Pauley Pavilion, what have you, with big strobes. Not too many people in the country knew how to do that. I was trained by the best guy possible, the main lighting tech for SI, a guy named David Keith. And I saw that this was an inroad, an opportunity for me to meet people through my assisting job. I'd have to go into arenas and meet people like Lee Zeidman, for example, who was the assistant operations manager at that time at the Forum. I'd have to ask Lee about coming in and installing strobes and getting a rigger. And then I'd meet the PR directors for the teams. And of course, the Kings and the Lakers were owned by California Sports, which was the Bus family. And, they had a lot of sports going on there inside the arena. So I was able to work my way in. I always say, like, if the door has a little crack in it, it's my job to stick my foot in a little more and open it a little more. Yeah. And I was persistent. I was able to sort of trade my sort of photography for access, which, back then you could do. You can't do that now, but I was able to do that. And I was producing photography that was a little different, using strobes. People weren't really doing that regularly throughout the country. There might have been really a handful, 5 or 6 photographers who were freelancers who were doing that. Sports Illustrated really kind of specialized that technique. And it was really fortuitous, fellas, that I was in LA at that time. This is about 1979, 1980, and the beginning of the Showtime era. And here I am getting a credential, to shoot Magic and Kareem and the guys. But, one of my early big breaks actually was the LA Kings. You mentioned them earlier, Dave, and the Kings were very, very gracious to me as a student. We had a class where we had to produce, let's say, an annual report, right? It was a term-long project. And I think this is the 4th or 5th term of my 8 terms at Art Center. And everybody's doing their project on, like, architecture or, a corporate thing or, an auto plant or whatever it was. Of course, I want to do it on some sports team. And I wrote I literally wrote to every sports team, including UCLA and USC, to try to get access because I needed to have behind the scenes access for like 3 months. Everybody turned me down except the LA Kings. And they said, sure, kid, you can come in and you can shoot our practice. You can come to games. You can do this and that.
That's crazy.
That was so affirming. I mean, it was really amazing. And to this day, the LA Kings, they're my longest running client. So I had so much gratitude towards them. And, the Kings were right down the hall from the Lakers. So everything kind of all worked out. The NBA brought their All-Star game to the Forum in '83. That was my start of working for them. Became the Dodgers team photographer in '84. That's a whole other story. And, things just sort of really started to snowball at that point. And that was the beginnings of the career. Sorry, that was a very long-winded answer.
No.
It's good.
I can remember back 45 years,
It is so important too. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned how the Kings kind of were like, took the chance or, kind of gave you that opportunity. And just thinking for myself, having a similar opportunity where I got interested in like live music photography. And again, of course I want to shoot like stadium and arena shows. I have no portfolio. Like I'm not, no one's going to approve me. So I end up reaching out to this one kind of local club that was getting some cool, like mid-level acts in. And I was like, I think I can cut my teeth here. I don't think there's any way they're going to approve me. And I reached out and was like, please, can I do house photos for you? Please, please, please. Mm-hmm. And they approved it. And then you better bet, like I was at every single show there. I didn't care if it was a band I didn't know. I'm going to like shoot every single thing and take full advantage. And also mostly it was this almost like imposter syndrome of like feeling like I didn't deserve to be there, And so it was kind of like, I need to make sure that I am earning the fact that they've given me this access, right. So it's, but then, after that, you kind of get all these shots, you get more confident, you use that to build your portfolio, you use relationships, like you said, a lot of different people know other people. And, but it is, I think, how critical do you think that is? I'm sure now as just as much, but, giving opportunities for some of those young photographers. I think sometimes would see where there might be some sort of barriers because of this reason or that. But you see, I'm sure you see it all the time. You see some young gun who's come in, they're, doughy-eyed and just amazed that they're there. But then you see their work and you're like, whoa, this kid is got an eye. Like, they have a talent. They might not even know the talent they have because they don't, and so, the importance of kind of giving that person that platform where they have the opportunity to grow.
Yeah, for sure. You hit the nail on the head. It has to start with talent. There has to be some sort of seed of a talent there with the person. Now, I think you're being humble, Paul, because you probably had more talent than you thought you had, because they wouldn't have had you keep coming back, right? I mean, the two things that are going to probably help you as a young photographer, one is talent. Two is not being a pain in the ass.
Yes, that's so important.
It's true. That's so true.
Yeah, you can be persistent, and you can be professional, and you can, have a teeny bit of a chip on your shoulder, because people kind of like that, especially, people in my world, they kind of like when you have that little bit of moxie to you, but in my position now, part of my job at the NBA, quite frankly, is helping to mentor the next generation. I work directly with the head of NBA Photos, Joe Amati, and he weekly is sending me people who have reached out to him that he sees, the beginnings of talent. I dive into whatever this person, their path, whatever they want to do, look at their work. They send me, I could be at a game and people are sending me stuff to look at, and I'm more than happy to do that. I do that with Kara Vanderhook, who I work for at Crypto.com Arena. She's sending me people. There's interns. I have a couple of former interns who started with me in high school, quite frankly, at 16, 17 years old, who are now bona fide full-time photographers, earning a living and doing great. And I take a little bit of credit for that, And I have to say it's paying it forward, because it was paid forward by the people before me. I reached out to the great Neil Leifer. I mean, if you can imagine at 19 years old, going to the Mount Rushmore of sports photographers, like reaching out to Neil Leifer, right? I wrote him a letter. I had like a 7th degree of separation sort of introduction to him. And he invited me over to his apartment for like a 20-minute meeting in New York. And that turned into a 2.5-hour masterclass that has lasted, 40 plus years. And he's still, I would say Neil is totally still a mentor, but of course a great friend and supporter. And when you're in a position like Neil's, you don't feel threatened by somebody like me. You actually want to help. You want to push the craft forward. I believe in my craft so much. The craft of photography, sports photography, venue photography specifically, that, I want to see the next generation just pick up the baton and run with it, because I don't want to, I believe in it. I'm loyal to it. I helped build it in some sense here in LA, and I wanted to continue after, I hang it up.
It's interesting, you've seen so much, from, Gretzky in LA to a couple Stanley Cups. And that's just with the Kings, right? But when you're taking a picture, do you know you're capturing an iconic moment, or is it often found out in the editing process?
Well, you get a little bit of a feeling that you might have shot something good. I think, Paul, you can probably appreciate this. I mean, be it a concert or a sporting event, or even in a portrait session, there's that moment between photographer and subject that you just feel like everything, quote unquote, clicked, that you had that whatever you want to call it, that connection, right? And when it comes to live event photography, be it sports, concerts, what have you, there are those moments, there are those moments when, Bruce Springsteen's on stage and I just know I nailed an amazing photo. And this is like back in the film days, but we didn't have the instant gratification of pushing the preview button, and camera shows you the picture. So the anticipation of that and having to either develop the film on site if it was black and white, or wait for the film to be developed the next day or what have you. That was a little nerve-wracking, but that was part of the
Sure.
process. Now in the age of digital, I mean, I literally know in the moment. The camera displays. I don't even have to push the button; it displays it right in front of me. So if I get a LeBron dunk, or a great game-winning shot, or there's a moment in the Grammys, for example, that is just like I remember Pink like flying through the arena, and there was just a moment when I knew everything came together with the lighting and the composition and everything else. That's so gratifying, and takes the anxiety out of it. Quite honestly, have to go home, wait all night, go back to the lab in the morning, and like pray when they bring the film out that you actually got the shot that you think you got in your head. Sometimes I was very pleasantly surprised when I would look through those rolls of film and say, "Wow, okay, I didn't realize I got that one." Or on
That's
the other
so
side,
true.
I thought I got that one, but I was out of focus, or a guy's eyes were closed, or the referee blocked it and I didn't realize, that kind of thing. So
We could do a whole podcast on referee blocks.
for sure. Yeah. So, that it's a mixed bag, but I prefer it the way it is now, although I'm not a huge fan of digital photography, quite frankly, but at least we get to see what we shot in the moment, which is helpful.
Yeah, I always love that walk back after you're finished shooting those first three songs and you're walking back in the venue underbelly, and all the photographers are just looking down at their little display screen, like trying to see what they got. Did I get something good? Did I get something good?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Well, it's better than doing that and say, did I load the camera? Did I forget? Did I put film?
Right.
I'm sure that's never happened to either of you guys, but
Never.
Yeah. You're so right. And, sometimes, especially if like you're shooting photos of like Pearl Jam and Eddie Vedder does some sort of like jump in the air, all the photographers are like, hold their breath, get some shots. And then they're looking at it later, like, did I get the jump? How was my jump? How were your jump photos? Like, what's going on? It is a fun thrill though, because I think you're exactly right too on this kind of calming. Like, I know when I shoot, it's, you're trying to get sort of these earmark photos that can capture that event, and as soon as you sort of have banked, at least me have banked a few of those, then it kind of takes the pressure off. But then the funny thing is sometimes it's the ones that you're not even thinking about that you shot, and then later you're reviewing, you're like, actually this is the best one and I didn't even think about it. It's like it seemed like the one I overlooked and ended up being the best of the bunch. And often it is sometimes those ones that are less standard too. I think there are so many photographers shooting one basketball game. Mm-hmm. Granted, everyone's from a little bit of a different angle, but sometimes it's, the in between things, or even like in portraits where you're catching the moments in between the poses that end up being the best photos, right? And, you're catching a reaction after the dunk. It might be better than the dunk itself because everyone else is going to get the dunk shot and you're getting the emotion that's displayed after it.
Yeah. I mean, of course, the danger these days is the chimping, is looking at the screen instead of looking at what's in front of you. Because how many times, and I'll include myself, at the top of the list, miss something because, I want to see what I just shot. Just missed that shot,
Exactly.
So that's a little hard to train yourself to not do that and wait till, a timeout or some other point where you can just scroll through and see what you got.
Andy, you're coming up on your 25-year anniversary with Crypto.com Arena, formerly Staples Center, of course, and Microsoft Theater LA Live, where you're currently the director of photography. What does that title mean? How much stuff are you shooting for these guys?
Well, I've been there since day one. I think I've been there since before day one, actually, because when Lee Zeidman was, I think it was employee number 1 or 2, hired by AEG to, help build Staples Center. This was back in like 97, I think we broke ground in 97 or 98. The building opened in 99, October 99, of course, with 4 nights of Bruce Springsteen, which is near and dear to my heart. Anyway, Lee brought me in as director of photography for an arena that yet to be built, where, I was shooting press conferences and of course groundbreaking and a few community events, and we did a time lapse of the entire construction, which was kind of interesting doing that on film. We did it from an office building that overlooked the site. And before that, I actually had a lot of experience as a venue, my company being Venue Photographers, official photographers, because we were the official photographers of the LA Sports Arena and Coliseum for a number of years. So I was used to that. I did a lot of work at the Forum as well, not particularly in an official capacity, but they leaned on me a lot for a lot of things that they needed. So that was a very big move for me to be named director of photography. I had to put a staff together, and of course we were there since day one. There's been over 4,500 events in that venue alone. Staples Center, now Crypto.com Arena, in 24 years. And then of course Nokia Theater opened a few years later, which became Microsoft. Now it's called Peacock. We've had over 1,500 events there. So combined, that's 6,000 events that my group and I have been charged with documenting and
it's a lot of photo storage, Andy. That's a lot of photo storage.
That's a lot. And we've had 10 championships happen inside the arena. I'm just reading here because I forgot. We had the Lakers have had 6 championships, the Kings 2 and the Sparks 3. So it's a pretty pretty great run. I think in terms of arenas, we're right up there with Madison Square Garden in terms of just the number of events. Of course, the Garden's been around a lot longer, and I grew up in the Garden, as a kid in New York. But it's a great place to work. The diversity of events that go on there, from the sport. We have 4 professional teams currently that play in that building. No one else can claim that. We have gigantic events like the Grammys, and across the street we have the ESPYs, and I don't know, 6 or 7 award shows every year. I might be wrong, maybe even more than that. Concerts, family shows, Cirque du Soleil, you name it, we've had it.
Yeah.
So it's been fun, and I've been able to groom some young photographers, like I said earlier, who started off as maybe a digital tech, who kind of worked their way in, and Kara, who I work with, has been great with sort of helping the next generation sort of pick up the mantle here. I have my go-to real core photographers that are really good at everything. Honestly, I mean, I could send the same photographer to a Kings game tonight, who can shoot a concert tomorrow, and maybe a press conference the next day, or a meet and greet, or a portrait. They have to be jacks of all trade, because that's how I built my career, and it needs to be a seamless operation. My clients need to know that whoever is coming to tonight's event is going to produce photography at the highest level, no matter who they are, because that's what's expected of us, of me personally, right? But of my company, every single event.
Right. So how often are you shooting versus somebody else on your team? How many nights a week are you out shooting an event? And are you doing concerts still yourself, or are you just pretty much focusing on the sports fun?
Well, I've tailed back a lot over the last 5 or 6 years, to the point where I have a great arrangement with the NBA that I do about every 3rd or 4th Lakers or Clippers game. I do a handful of Kings games myself. I don't shoot concerts anymore, but I will shoot a Grammys or an ESPYs. And, I've kind of left it to the younger generation, let's just say, or the more energetic group. And look, as long as the end result is at the level that my client, like I said, my clients expect, I have never heard from any of my clients like, they don't want to see this person, or then work isn't good enough, or, there's been some tweaks and some critiques and things along the way, of course, and with me as well. But I feel super confident that I don't have to micromanage or look over people's shoulders, because I know the job's going to get done. That's the bottom line.
Sure.
Andy, you have traveled around to different venues, and you probably have an interesting perspective versus, someone that works at venues, more on like the marketing or ops side versus, talent, to you, what makes a great venue, maybe from the photography perspective, but also just from the originality. I mean, obviously you're in the garden, you're shooting that wide shot, you see that roof of the garden. It is so iconic. Right. And so, is it a mix of, things that like design of the venue? Is it the hospitality? Is it all the above? Like makes a great venue for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's a few factors. I mean, some of them have to do with just creature comfort. Like, is the parking convenient, and
Sure.
Access to the arena? Is it difficult or easy? Like some arenas, you can just drive down, drop off equipment, or just walk down the loading dock. Some arenas you can't. Some arenas you have to have a credential, special credential, or have an NBA all arena credential, but sometimes they need to see the actual team credential in some places. When it comes to NBA kind of needs and wants, it really depends on the infrastructure of the court, for example. Like, am I going to be jammed up on the baseline with a fan's legs like literally straddling me or their knees in my back?
Right.
Which is the case in most arenas now, because they really are maximizing how much seating they can put in on the baselines.
Right.
Give you an example. The Lakers have a big apron, right? It's probably 6 feet from where I sit to the baseline. And there's probably about 5 feet, 6 feet behind me there's only one row of fans. The Clippers have 3 rows of fans, right? With the same walkway that has to be between courtside people and the stands behind them, right?
Sure.
So they're jamming 3 rows into what the Lakers use as 1 row. So you can imagine it's very tight. The NBA has very strict restrictions on where we can sit and how, we can't be over a certain line, for example. It's just the way it is. When it comes to hockey, that's an even, I guess, bigger thing, because our arena is actually a difficult arena to shoot hockey. We only have 5 holes cut in the boards. I come from the Forum where, we had 4 corners to shoot from. In our arena at Crypto, we only have 3 corners. There's more TV now. Some arenas, have a couple of more holes than we do because they have another corner to shoot from. Some arenas, the hole in the boards is actually cut closer to the goal line, which sounds like a small thing, but it's actually a big thing, because then you could see down ice, where in our arena you can't see the opposite goal and shoot that. Strobes are another thing. Now every NBA arena is rigged with at least two sets of strobes, one for the local team photographer, and then one for a league photographer like myself. So if I go to San Antonio, or I go to Portland, or Golden State, or wherever I go, there's another set of strobes. In the old days, we had to actually bring those with us and install them and take them out.
Right.
And then, of course, things like, security people and the press room, and where is my digital tech going to set up, and how is the Wi-Fi connection, and is there a hard line, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of things on the checklist. Not every arena can check every box the same. But if you bat about 70 or 80%, then you're doing pretty good.
That's so true. I mean, I think everyone, of course, tries to do what they can to, and sometimes they're limited by the age of the arena, frankly. Sometimes you're like, yeah, I really want to roll this out, and we got some old bones in here. Like,
that's here's
what
really
we're working with.
Yeah, that's really true. I mean, we've been to arenas where in the early days of digital, and having to plug into an Ethernet line like that, they couldn't even find an Ethernet line in some old arenas. I remember going to Arco Arena in Sacramento. I don't even know if they had Wi-Fi in that building, honestly. So, I mean, it sounds crazy, but the arena in San Antonio, which is now, it's rebranded, but it used to be called AT&T Center. You could not get a cell signal in the AT&T Center. Figure that out. It's kind of a weird deal, but look, I'm so fortunate, guys, to work in a building primarily, in crypto, but in LA, where the creature comforts, quite honestly, are taken for granted. To do what I do, what my dear friend Nat Butler has to do in Madison Square Garden and at Barclays Center in Brooklyn, and if he goes to Philly or Boston, it's a whole other animal. Even dealing with parking and weather,
Right.
Schlepping gear from an outdoor parking lot in the snow to the press entrance. I don't have to deal with that. So, I knock on wood or Formica and thank my lucky stars that my career, stayed in LA and didn't really have to break out the winter coat too often.
Tell me about this book project you did with Kobe and the Mamba mentality.
Well, I was just so fortunate, guys, that I got to meet this young guy, Kobe Bryant, as a 18-year-old rookie. It's just amazing that our relationship started the moment I met him on Media Day 1996. I saw something in him that I saw, when I was his age, that I kind of could relate to. And we had this sort of bond from the beginning that we didn't really figure out, like, how to verbalize that until we actually were doing the book 20 years later, that we were basically as obsessed with our professions and our crafts. Each other could respect that. He was obsessed with a basketball player. I was obsessed with being a photographer. We used to have this running joke. It's like, who would get to the arena first, him or me? And I always won, so. But what happened was, I obviously spent his entire career in front of my lens. I mean, every significant moment of his career, I safely can say I was there for all 5 championships, his Olympics, MVPs. I was there, when he met Vanessa. I was there when he became a dad. When his jersey was retired and all that. So, got to be the end of his career. We knew his career was coming to an end in that 2015-16 season. And I just thought about the mountain of photography that I had produced that had not been published or seen.
Right.
There's probably some gems in there that if we really dove into it, we could probably produce a book along with sort of my quote unquote greatest hits of his career. So I went to him and presented that idea. I actually made a mock-up of a Taschen sumo book, which you guys, I'm sure, have seen. These gigantic, they're basically like 4 feet across once you open them up. And,
Sure.
That's the top of the food chain when it comes to beautiful art and photography books. And I made a prototype, and he was very gracious and patient with me as I made the presentation. And I was there in front of his whole marketing team, and they all looked at me like I was crazy. Like, why are you making this presentation to him? But I felt like I needed to get out to him what I wanted to do. And he very patiently went through the prototype and looked at it and didn't say a word. And I'm, of course, sweating bullets, thinking what's going to come out now. And he closed the book, and he looked at me and he said, well, Andy, I got some good news and I got some bad news. I'm like, okay, what's the good news? He said, the good news is that we're going to do a book together, right? The bad news is we're not doing this book. Just think about, he knew exactly the book he wanted to do. He knew everything he wanted to do. He was always 5 steps ahead of everybody else in everything. Even on the court, he knew 3 plays from now what was going to happen. He just was clairvoyant in that way and so prepared. And he knew that he wanted to be able, in his own words, to tell the world what the Mamba mentality meant to him and what being the Black Mamba meant to him. He adopted this sort of superhero kind of character as the Black Mamba. Nobody really kind of understood that. He was very kind of vague about it, changed his number from 8 to 24, never really discussed that. And then he had this sort of mindset of the Mamba mentality. Like, okay, what does that mean? And basically, when he was on the court, that sort of spoke for itself. It's just this assassin killer, take no prisoners attitude, right? But he wanted to dive into it in his own words very deeply in his own book. and have it illustrated by my photos. That was the whole idea of the book. And it's an incredible collaboration, as you can imagine, with one of the greatest athletes of all time. He was incredibly precise on what he wanted, not to the point of it was challenging. It wasn't difficult per se, but half of his career, keep in mind, was pre-digital, was in film, shot on film.
Right.
So, I had some great editors back at the NBA Photos Archive in New Jersey who needed to dive deep into the archive to find certain stuff, certain moments that he wanted to talk about. Book is divided into two parts. It's process, which is basically everything mentally and physically he had to do to prepare himself to play, to recover from injury, mental preparation as well. And then craft, which is everything basketball related, how he became this incredible basketball player, how he built that career, how he learned from previous mistakes, or what he learned from playing against the greats. And we have that section is broken down, playing with and against some of the greats in the game. We had Pau Gasol write the forward, and Phil Jackson wrote the introduction. It was just an amazing compilation of talents all across the board. And I'm just grateful that he asked me to do it. And now, of course, it's his legacy now. That is his words talking about his career and what the Mamba mentality meant to him. It's now a worldwide bestseller I think it's in 25 languages across the world. And I'm just grateful again to have been part of it.
I think it's interesting that you brought up this relation you all had to each other because of your dedication to your craft. And I was thinking about this earlier when you were saying how so much is about talent. Like when you're identifying young photographers, you're looking at their talent. And I was kind of thinking with sports, it's the same way. Everyone always talks about, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, which definitely there's some truth to that, but you do need some of that raw talent. And I think sometimes people, whether they're athletes or they're photographers, they have sometimes an entitlement to them because they feel like they're in their spot and they might rest on their laurels a little bit. And then you have some young people that it's like they're hungry, they're motivated, and boy, do they work really hard. And so they're gonna, when you have that hunger, you have that drive, you can really, push yourself. And, clearly you've been very successful and, have been doing this for many years, but also it is so true that when you look at an athlete like Kobe or, people in any other sport, having that similar drive, that self-motivation is so critical to kind of sustaining it and to just always find that next challenge to keep yourself kind of interested.
Yeah, for sure. Look, he wouldn't want anybody that was less crazy than him at his obsessed. Kobe had a great saying that if you're not as obsessed with what you do as with what I do, we don't speak the same language. I mean, that was definitely right. Everyone that he surrounded himself with, from trainers to physical therapists to, I want to include myself, were completely dedicated to what we do. A little bit crazy, and
Right.
We could all relate to each other and work as a group. He had a very, very small, tight inner circle that he trusted. And it is all about trust. It's all about establishing that trust early. When he came in the league, I'd already been 13, 14 years working in the NBA. So he was familiar with my history with the league, but also especially with the Laker organization, with the Buss family, with Magic, with Pat Riley, Mitch Kupchak, Jerry West, all the guys on the inside. So it was, as long as I didn't screw up at the beginning, like that first or second impression, because you don't really ever get a second impression, and show that above everything else that I was trustworthy to be on the inside and understand what that meant to really truly be a fly on the wall, be discreet, just do my job without any fanfare, calling attention to myself, then it was going to last for a long, long time. I mean, I didn't know it would lead to a 20-year career and a worldwide bestseller, but so be it. That's how it happened. And that's one of the things I pride myself on, guys, is that, I've been working with the same people for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Like you said, coming up on 25 years at the arena. Worked with the same NBA people for 43 years. Some of them have been there as long as me. The LA Kings. It's a little bit humbling when they think about it because, of course, when I was a young photographer, I didn't even think this far in advance. I always thought about like the next game or the next road trip or
Right.
the next magazine I'm going to get published in. And I had benchmarks for what I wanted to accomplish along the way, as I built my career up. And, those kept, being met. And then I go to the next one and the next one. So now sort of looking back on it, it's incredibly gratifying view, quite frankly. And I'm not done yet. I'm not making any big announcements over here, guys. I'm still out there shooting, you know what I'm saying? I've just been able to pull back, which has really helped me physically mostly and mentally. And I'm trying to also have enough bandwidth to really build this Legends of Sport platform that's been, my partners and I have been working on for the last 7 or 8 years, which, takes a lot of work, takes a lot of time, as you know, to build something new.
Tell us a little about that, about Legends of Sport. I know there's a podcast is a big element. You've talked to a lot of these great legends of sport appropriately. Some of these greatest WNBA players, NBA players, people that you've, I'm sure, shot multiple times over the years. How did that come about, and what are your kind of hopes with that?
Well, I have 2 very, very good friends who are also happen to be in the sports business. And we would go to games together, and we would see a lot of these players that, former players that we loved, kind of, see them falling on hard times, or just sort of the spotlight has moved away from them. And it kind of broke my heart a little bit because, I don't want to see like my idols be struggling financially or anything else. And Legends of Sport was really born out of the desire to kind of bring the spotlight back, document, and sort of help to monetize really iconic athletes, teams, moments, venues, and personalities in sport. So we feel like Legends of Sport is a niche in the sports, the digital sports landscape, where we don't really care about last night's score. We're not posting that on our website. But you know what? If Klay Thompson hits a game winner, which he did last night in a game against Sacramento, we might look back at other great game winners that have happened. When did Kobe hit a great game winner? Or if Steph Curry has, 18 threes or something, how does that compare with when Reggie Miller did it, or Ray Allen, or, Texas Rangers just won their first World Series. So we might look back on other teams that waited a long time to win a World Series. So we're sort of bridging the past with the present. And the podcast was the launching off point about six years ago. We're going into our 7th season, where I would sit down with an icon, a legend across the board in sports. Could be a former athlete, could be somebody like Peter Guber, an owner, could be Lee Zeidman, who runs a venue, could be anybody in the world of sports. We've had entertainers on, great super fans, of course, amazing, iconic athletes like Jerry West and Sue Bird and Magic Johnson, and of course, Kobe when our book came out. And, I get to have a long form conversation with these people, which is like the greatest gift in the world, to sit down and do that and find out, really drill into like what made them tick, just like the first question you asked me, like,
I was going to say, that's what we're doing to you right now, Andy.
Right. But that's the key. And that's what people love. They want to know how did this person start out?
Absolutely.
Who was influential in their career? Who gave them advice? How are they pushing it forward? What are they doing now? We talk about social justice issues. We talk about mental health issues. We talk about pay equity. We talk about all kinds of stuff. And I was doing the podcast when I was in the NBA bubble once a week from my little hotel room in Orlando. I love doing it. we're like I said, we're preparing now for season 7. We've done 200 episodes of the podcast, and we have a few other things going on right now, but the podcast is definitely on our radar to start up probably around the first of the year again.
That's awesome.
That's so cool. I can't wait. Actually, I have not had a chance to check it out, but I do look forward to taking a listen. Hey, I know we're running out of time here, but before we let you go, I want to hit you with our fast five. 5 quick questions, just looking for your instant, brief response. First up, do you remember the first sporting event you ever attended?
Yes, it was a Mets game. I don't remember who it was against, but I was probably 7, I think. And my dad took me to Shea Stadium to a Mets game, so it definitely was that.
How about a favorite sporting event, whether you're working or just as a fan?
That's tough, right?
Oh, that's a tough one. I got to go back to being a fan, and not a specific one, but my dad had season tickets to the Rangers hockey at Madison Square Garden my whole time growing up. I mean, I remember going to my first Ranger game. I might have been like 9, and we used to go religiously with his brother. My uncle Julie lived in New Jersey, and I just loved going to the Garden for hockey games. It was a ritual. It was how I bonded with my dad. I would have to look at that as a whole, as not a specific one. I mean, there were some amazing Ranger games, like Rangers against the Bruins, Rangers against Philadelphia back in the early 70s, which were like ridiculous. But as a memory, I really have to put that at the top. Yeah.
Is there an event that you haven't shot that you would love to shoot? Give me your bucket list event. Could be a concert, could be a sporting event. What's something that's still on your list that you still haven't had the chance to shoot yet?
Wow, that's a great question, man. I would love. I used to shoot a lot of tennis when I first started. I would love to go to Wimbledon. I would love to go to the French Open at Roland Garros. I watch those on TV and I just salivate, because I have some good friends. My good friend Jen Podheiser runs the photography for the U.S. Open, and I just love seeing. And she hires some really good friends of ours, mutually. And I love seeing their work. There's something about tennis. It's like almost like basketball. It's so graceful, but like ferocious at the same time,
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Personalities. I wouldn't mind going to another Super Bowl or 2. I've done, I think, probably 3 Super Bowls in my life. There's nothing like a Stanley Cup final when you get to a Game 7, which I've been to a couple of times. That's pretty amazing. Of course, in NBA Finals, I can't even tell you how many Game 7s I've been across, from the playoffs throughout my entire career. But a Game 7 in the NBA Finals is pretty incredible. I would love to do another Game 7 in the NBA Final for sure.
How about your favorite thing to do on a day off?
Well, we have this little cabin up in the mountains, which, believe it or not, there are mountains in Southern California, about an hour and a half. I love going up there. If I have a day or two, my wife and I bring our daughter sometimes if she can get away. It's just something about being in nature, literally like getting off the freeway and heading up the hill, which is only like a half an hour from the freeway to our cabin. It's just so cathartic, and being in the trees, as my wife likes to say, it's just so invigorating. So that's something we like to do. We like to go up there and like to walk. Even in the winter, we get a lot of snow up there, which is kind of crazy to think about in Southern California. But that's my go-to right now. I don't play golf. Doesn't mean I won't ever play golf, but I don't play golf again. I've taken up tennis again, which I love. So that's a lot of fun. We play tennis as a family. So
that's good.
Yeah.
All right, last one. What's the theme song to your TV show? So there's a TV show where cameras follow you around. It's the Andy Bernstein show, and it's all about you and your life. What's the song that plays over the opening credits?
It's got to be "No Surrender" by Bruce Springsteen for sure. No retreat, no surrender.
No retreat, baby, no surrender.
Yeah, no surrender. I mean, it's like, you get knocked down, you get back up. I mean, I learned this from a lot of people, from my dad, from growing up in Brooklyn, from, going to a school that didn't want me to all kinds of stuff. And then, getting introduced to people like Magic and working around Pat Riley and just seeing how these guys operate. that it's a no prisoners, no surrender attitude. And of course, the Mamba himself, who is such an inspiration to me. And, no surrender means a lot to me in a lot of different ways in my personal life and my business life. So that's got to be the theme song.
I love that. All right. So give us some plugs. If somebody wants to check out your work or follow along with your adventures or check out Legends Sport, give me all the plugs here.
Yeah. So you can see my work, my venue work for my group, of course, you can see on the Crypto.com arena, Instagram, Peacock Theater, if there's an event there. But my personal work you can see on Instagram primarily at ADB Photo Inc. Our Instagram at Legends of Sport is at Legends of Sport. And we do a lot of cross-platforming between the two. And we're building our YouTube channel. So that's Legends of Sport on YouTube. And the podcast, of course, called Legends of Sport. Our home base is iHeart, but of course you can get it on any podcast network. All of our podcasts are cataloged there, so you can just pick one out, listen to it. I would love to hear people's comments. We really pay a lot of attention to the comments on social media. People,
sports fans aren't shy about sharing their thoughts.
Right. And people say, well, why don't you introduce so-and-so? Or why don't you interview this guy? Or why don't you do that? And we're like, yeah, we'll do that. Sure.
Great idea.
Yeah. And then just a little coming attraction here, fellas, is that we at Legends of Sport are working with Vanessa Bryant, Kobe's widow, on a book of all the murals, Kobe and Gigi Bryant murals all over the world.
Oh, that's cool.
Production on that book. Stay tuned on that. Maybe we'll talk next year or so when the book is ready to come out. But that's a very, very exciting project to be collaborating with her. I'm humbled and really grateful to her that she wanted to do it with us and with me. So I'm excited about that.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Hey, I really appreciate your time today, and best of luck with all the years, and happy 45th and 25th and all the anniversaries you're celebrating this year.
Thank you, fellas. So great to connect with you. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
And a big thanks to everybody for listening to this episode of Adventures in Venueland. Remember, you can subscribe and find more episodes wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We do love your 5-star reviews. It helps others find us. Until the next adventure, I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. Thanks for listening, everyone. Adventures in Venueland is a side project of the Event and Venue Marketing Conference, a marketing conference that brings together diversified event and venue professionals to cultivate education, collaboration, and innovation for the growing sports and live entertainment industry. Find out more at eventvenuemarketing.com.
Audio editing and mixing by Camille Faulkner.
Design and digital advertising by Megan Ebeck.
Copywriting and publicity by Samantha Marker.
Guest booking and brand strategies by Paul Hooper.
Guest research by Dave Rettelberger.
Marketing strategies by Paul Hooper, Megan Ebeck, and Samantha Marker. Thanks for joining us. Until the next adventure.